name is Matt Skirman. I'm one of the attorneys here at Chaffetz and Dean, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's Business Builder series. We started this a couple of years ago during the height of COVID when nobody could get together in person, but we wanted to create something where we could still give value to the people that are the friends of the firm that we work with and other people involved in real estate. So we started doing these Zoom meetings once a month on the third Wednesday of the month, and we've continued that on after everything kind of calmed down a little bit. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just if you have questions, you can send them via chat, and I will be monitoring that, and I'll pass those along. Otherwise, I think Kyle has left some time at the end of the presentation for questions as well. Just as an FYI, we are taking a break next month from this for the holidays. We figure everybody has a lot going on in December, so we are going to take the month of December off. So this will be our last business builder for the year. We want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. I hope you and yours have a great rest of the year. Please keep your eyes open for the January announcement for the speaker for January. For now, we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got Kyle Peace with the Millennium Brokerage Group with us today. He's going to talk a little bit about some blind spots of financial and retirement planning for business owners and 1099 employees, and give us some great information and tips on how we can kind of shore up our retirement planning. So Kyle, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and let you start, and I'll leave it to you.
All right. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Matt, Doug, and Tracy for inviting me, having me on. They say you save the best for last. I don't know if we've really got that today. Hopefully you'll gather some good stuff out of this, but I'm certainly not going to claim that we're having the best for last here. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get cranked up and going. As Matt had mentioned, we're going to talk about the blind spots of financial planning. And when I say financial planning, financial and retirement planning. And I wanted to kind of level set, blind spots of financial planning, what exactly is that? So let me sort of set the stage. When it comes to financial planning, a lot of times I know when I was coming up through college, I graduated and was told, hey, go get you a corporate job, max out your 401k, and there's your financial plan. And, a lot of us did that. And, for others, it's, take your money to an advisor, have them invest it, and that's going to be your wealth growing component, and that will be your retirement plan. Well, that's all well and good. In order to have things in retirement and to plan for your retirement, you do have to have wealth. There's no doubt about that. But we got very little instruction beyond that. So once we build the wealth, how do we then take that wealth back out to our best benefit? But not only that, how do we make sure that we have enough saved up for our retirement? So that's sort of what creates the blind spot. So then if you're going to call it blind spots, then what is a blind spot? What am I talking about? Well, blind spots are typically, if you think about driving a vehicle and driving down the highway, if you're going to change lanes, you check your mirrors and then you check your blind spot. Well, we all know there's a blind spot. Well, why is it? It's because what makes it a blind spot is the fact that there's a car there. And that car is something you can't see just by using your mirrors. You have to actually turn, look out your window so you can see what's there. Well, usually what's there is there to harm you. Very seldom do we ever talk about a blind spot being something good. Now, just last week, my son came home from high school with a letter stating that he had earned an academic letter. Got to be honest with you, I didn't see that coming. That was a blind spot. When I was coming up through high school, I don't know there was a such thing as an academic letter. If there was, I didn't qualify for it. So when he came home with that news, it was certainly something that we didn't see coming. But that's one of those rare occasions where a blind spot is good. Usually what's in that blind spot is there to harm you. So if you think about that, okay, why is this important for the self-employed and contractors? Well, because the self-employed usually don't have the 401k or the pension to rely on. As I said, I was instructed you go to work corporately and you're putting into a 401k where I'm contributing. There's a company putting some sort of match in there and it's in the market and it's growing. Self-employed a lot of times don't have that. So they're sort of on their own to figure out, okay, they spend a lot of time thinking, how do I grow my business? How do I get my business where I need it to be right now? And you're thinking about what's going to happen once you get into retirement is sort of an afterthought. They never really think about that. So without the 401k or the pension, we have to think about, okay, what are we going to do with the business? Because obviously the business is going to be the funding for that retirement. Are we going to sell the business, or are we going to maintain ownership until we just pass away and use the passive income as our retirement income? Well, depending on which way you want to go, there are certain ways that you want to have that structured to be able to do what it is you're looking to do. But at the same time, you also want to make sure you don't run out of any money. So that's why it's important for the self-employed and the contractors. So the 4 blind spots are listed here. You got market fluctuations, healthcare costs, taxation, and longevity risk. Now, the market fluctuations for this presentation speaks mainly of financial market fluctuations, but it can be any fluctuation that you're in. And you all are in the real estate business. So you could still have real estate fluctuations in that market. So if in selling real estate, if your goal is to, maybe you're going to flip houses, maybe you're going to make purchases and rent properties out, that could be your planned retirement income, but you could still have fluctuations. I mean, if the economy, let's say you've got a condominium at the beach and then the economy goes through some troubled times and then you don't have someone renting that condo, that's going to cut into your retirement income. Or if you're flipping houses and like here recently, interest rates went on the rise. Now all of a sudden you're not generating as much revenue off the sale of your flip as you would have previously. That can cut into your retirement income. So what we want to do is whatever market you're in, we want to find a way to hedge against those market fluctuations in case that happens to you while you're in retirement. Healthcare costs, this is, more commonly known as long-term care. For your healthcare costs, when you hit that magic age of 65, you're going to qualify for Medicare, which is group health insurance for the elderly. But what Medicare does not cover is long-term care. And that's typically when you get deeper on into life and you're in the final years. If you have a long-term care event, you're going to need monies to pay for that, because the alternative, if you want to use a government program, is Medicaid. And most people who join these podcasts are not going to qualify for Medicaid, and nor do they want to. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about healthcare costs. Taxation. You may have recently heard that the tax brackets have changed. It's not so much my job to know how they changed, but to know that they changed and to be able to explain to you that they could change at any moment. And because of that, we want to hedge against taxation. These are things that a lot of your financial advisors don't explain this or talk through this with their clients to make sure that they're properly hedged against things like that. Longevity risk, by definition, is really the risk of living too long. And when I say living too long, I mean you're outliving your money. You've run out of money and you've still got 4 or 5 years left of life. What happens then? How do you hedge against making sure you don't outlive your money? So that's the 4 blind spots, is that they're rarely covered. They should be a concern of everyone, but particularly those who are self-employed or contractors who don't have basis retirement plans. When they form their retirement plan, these 4 things need to be considered. So to get into it a little more detailed, each one, the market fluctuations, okay, what will the markets do? And you don't have to be in the financial industry to understand the markets are going to jump, right? They go up, they go down. I would say the last 6 months has been quite volatile. If you follow it at all, you've seen a couple of weeks go by where the markets seem like they're just completely tanking and falling apart. Then you'll have 4 or 5 days of really good returns and it looks like they're coming back. Well, but then if you look at the whole picture, you'll find that it didn't come back as much as it lost. So you're still kind of going down a little bit. And you'll have days when it goes up. Everybody knows it's going to do that. But the second point, more importantly, when will it do it? When will it do what it's going to do? And we call that in the financial world the sequence of returns. And that is very important to know how the sequence of returns can affect you and how can you hedge against that risk, because you can't hedge against it. So I've got an example here. Numbers are a little small, but hopefully you'll be able to see it on your screen. This is a slide that shows two investors who do exactly the same thing. They've invested $500,000. They're getting a 6% average return and 4% withdrawals that increase 2% each year for the cost of living. These two, the only difference here is the sequence of returns. Investor two's sequence of returns is the exact opposite of investor one. And what's key, there's a lot of numbers on this page. Oh my goodness, what are we looking at? The key thing to look at is go down to year 25. You can see investor one in year 25, go over to the far right-hand corner or column. It says year-end value, zero money. That sequence of returns created this person. If they're still alive, they're out of money. Whereas investor two, if you take the sequence of returns and just inverse them, you can see after year 25, this person still got nearly $2.1 million and they've been taking income in retirement. So the sequence of returns, that's how impactful it can be. And since World War II, we've had 14 or 15 bear markets. And a bear market is when the markets have dropped, I think it's 25% or greater, you have a bear market. Well, those bear markets, if you have say a 25 or a 30-year retirement duration, you're going to see 5 or 6 of these bear markets. So depending on when those losses come in and how quickly they can come back up is going to determine whether or not you've got enough money to live. These are things, again, that a lot of advisors are not explaining to their clients that, hey, we can plan on a certain return and that's what we're looking for, but it may not work out that way. And if it doesn't work out that way, what is plan B? So certainly something you want to identify, discuss with your financial advisor if you have one. And if you don't, if you're going to try to navigate this yourself, keep that in mind, that if you're counting on the financial markets or the real estate markets, that sequence of return is going to be more important than what that market actually does for you. When it comes to healthcare costs, as I said, we're talking about long-term care. Now, with long-term care, stats tell us that 7 out of 10 people are going to have a long-term care event. Now, what is a long-term care event? A long-term care event is going to be where you either have a cognitive impairment, which is either dementia or Alzheimer's, or there's going to be 2 of life's daily functions that you can't perform without assistance. When you have either of these events, your doctor will prescribe for you a plan of care. That plan of care is what you use to get your long-term care benefits for your care. Now, what does that cost? Well, if you see here, the average self-fund cost today is $250,000. That is from the time of diagnosis until you pass away, it costs about $250,000. That tenure of time is about 4.5 years. Okay. As I mentioned, Medicare does not cover long-term care. It will cover your first 100 days or until you get diagnosed as chronic or you get better. Well, if you get better, you don't need long-term care, right? So chronic means you're either going to stay the same or you're going to get worse. At that point, that's when you're going to need your long-term care. So how are you going to pay for these expenses? Are you going to use coverage or are you going to use your investments? You can go either way. But what you'd want to do, if you're going to use your own portfolio to pay for it out of pocket, you need to make sure you've got plenty of money there to take care of that. Now, yeah, you all are in the real estate business. $250,000 has got to be covered over a 4.5 year period. That's like buying a $250,000 house and your mortgage is set up to be paid off in 4.5 years. So that's how you equate that. So when we're going to look, okay, how do we forecast out? I mean, your long-term care event could be, just like your retirement, 25 or 30 years out. How do we go and purchase a policy today that's going to cover those needs that far down the road? Because, if we're planning on the portfolio, we should have a plan in place to grow our wealth. But how much do we need to earmark of that money to be for our long-term care? Because as you can see, if you don't earmark money for it, it can blow a huge hole in your retirement portfolio. Well, what we do is this is not a user capable type slide. This is just a tool that I've got that I can use to help back into how much coverage you need. This tool essentially is telling you that if you take, let's use a 4% inflation factor as an example. At 4% inflation, those numbers I shared with the cost of long-term care. Now, that's not the cost of a long-term care policy. That's paying for your care out of pocket. That will double every 18 years based on 4%. So if you're 50 years old today and it's $250,000, by the time you're 68, it's going to be $500,000. So as you're planning your portfolio, you are basically burdening your portfolio to grow an additional $500,000 to handle your long-term care if you're not going to buy a policy for coverage. So, but at 68, that's still relatively young for long-term care. So if you add another 18 years, you're 86 years old. Yeah, that's, if you're going to need long-term care, it's going to be in your 80s. So what does that do? With the 500,000 doubles again. So at age 86, you're going to need about $1 million earmarked for your long-term care. There's a more efficient way of taking care of that than trying to raise the portfolio or grow it through the markets to make sure you have that money. Now, if the real estate market is what's going to provide your retirement income, now you're looking at situations where when that time comes for long-term care, you may have to liquidate some properties to take care of your care. Well, you all know this better than I do. When you have to sell something, you're not going to get as much for it as when you could just relax and set your price and wait on the buyer. So that's why you don't really want to necessarily count on the real estate market to take care of that for you, because you've got to liquidate it first. So that's kind of how we work the long-term care game. It's okay, how old are you? How much coverage are we going to need, and how do we get there? This is just an example of a tool that I use to help back into that. And that 4 years, the 4% inflation factor at 7, how did I get that 18%? If you take 4%, take any percentage rate you want, divide it into 72, that's how long it takes for that money to double. So at 4%, 4 into 72 is 18. It takes 18 years for the 250 to double. That's how I got that. So you can use any inflation factor you want. If you want to use 5%, use 5 or 3, whatever you want. Okay, taxation. What do we do about taxes? Like I said before, tax brackets just recently changed. They can change at any time. Well, because it's a moving target, how do you get your portfolio set up to where you can take care of any kind of tax change that may come about? I know there's always been a debate between Roth IRAs versus traditional IRAs. And you've got the IRA camp saying, well, I don't want to pay, I want a tax deduction for that money this year. I want it now. So I'm going to save it. I'll pay the taxes later, because when I'm in retirement, I should be in a lower tax bracket. Okay, that's one line of thinking. The other is, give me the Roth. I want to pay the taxes now because I'm going to grow it. And when I'm in retirement, I get the money I put in it back out tax-free plus my growth. I'm gonna have more money then, and that I don't want to pay taxes on than I have now. Okay, that's another line of thinking. But what about this? What if you're right, kind of in both scenarios, where you you went ahead and you've planned on paying taxes in retirement, so you decided to go with the traditional IRA, and you are in a lower tax bracket. You're in the lowest tax bracket. But what if the lowest tax bracket is paying 40%? Now, that's higher than our highest tax bracket is now. And you might look at me and go, Kyle, that is crazy, man. There's no way wherever the lowest tax bracket is going to be 40%. Oh, but yes, it can. Anybody know Ronald Reagan? You probably do, or maybe you've heard the name. I know I'm old enough to know who Ronald Reagan was. Ronald Reagan, President of the United States, got into politics because before he was into politics, he was an actor. We know that. He was making $100,000 per year per movie. He would never make more than 2 movies per year because the tax bracket he was in, for every dollar over $200,000 he made, 95% of that dollar had to go to the government for taxes. That's why one of the reasons why he got into politics is because of that. We are in the lowest, when it comes to tax brackets, we are paying the lowest taxes since the invention of taxes. And I know we all don't feel that way because we're paying a lot of money in taxes. How can that be? But if you look at the tax brackets and the history of taxation, we're paying the least amount of taxes we've ever paid. So if you've got, think about the national debt where it's at, and the income is down where it's at. In order to balance that, you can do it in 3 ways. One, you can stop your spending. The other is you can increase your income, or you could do both. Well, out of the 3 ways to fix that, 2 of them requires tax increases. So how in the world do we plan for the taxation in retirement? Well, the best way to do it is to get yourself set up to where the income comes tax-free. Now, this is very impactful for the business owners because they don't have the 401ks. A lot of times they don't set up the Roth or the IRA, so they're not regulated what they do with their money. So there are ways to build that up where you get that money back tax-free. I've got 3 ways listed here. You've got the LERP concept, Roth conversions, and Roth accounts. Now, Roth accounts, just like I said, you're paying your taxes now, put the money in there. It plus the growth comes out tax-free. The maximum you can put in that per year, if you're younger than 50, is $6,500. If you're over 50, is $7,500. Roth conversions are more effective when you have someone they've built up an IRA or a 401k and they want to convert that over to a Roth. There's a way of doing that. And is it advantageous to do so? Yes, it is, but you've got to be careful with your tax brackets because it does involve taking distributions, paying taxes this year on that money, and then putting it into a Roth. When you take distributions, you want to make sure those distributions don't make the rest of your income have to pay in a higher tax bracket. So that's something that we've got to watch out for. Longevity risk. Okay. The risk of living too long. This is where we have built a portfolio and our advisors told us, okay, you can afford to take 4% per year and you have a 90% chance of your money lasting longer than you. Now let's digest what I just said. 4% is what you can afford to take. So let's say we've got $1 million portfolio. 4% is $40,000. Now, that's not a lot of money. And now when you add that to your Social Security, and hopefully your debt is very low, if any debt at all, that could be good money. It's not like it used to be where retirement was a 3-legged stool, where the one leg was your Social Security, one leg was a pension plan, and the other leg was your savings. Well, pension plans don't really exist anymore, and they certainly don't exist for real estate agents. So that's one leg gone. So you're left with Social Security and your savings. So when you save up the money, your advisor is going to tell you, okay, 4%, that's the going rate today. Why do they tell you 4%? Because they feel like they can earn back with your investments more than what you're taking in income. Well, it's not just 4% that's coming out. You're taking 4%. Then you could have, like we mentioned before, one of the first blind spot, market fluctuations could take money out. Your advisor's taking a fee out. So what are you left with? And just for an example, that $1 million portfolio, after you take those deductions out of there, well, you're taking, let's say the market drops 20% the first year of retirement. So your $1 million is now 800,000. You took 40,000 out. Your advisor charged you 1%. You're down to $750,000, and all you did was take $40,000 out. Oh my goodness! If that happened in the first year, you're going to have some issues. You may have to go back to work because you can't work on the backside of retirement in the latter years. You can't go back to work, right? So if you were going back to work, the early years are when you would go back to work. So what you've got to do, you've got to hedge against that to make sure you don't run out of money. Now, that's just the 4% figure. Don't forget what I said. If you take 4% per year, you have a 90% chance of making it. Now, 90% is a good grade. That's a good number, but it's not 100%, right? I mean, you would want to have a 100% chance of making it to the end. So you want to hedge against that, because if it's 90%, that means 10% don't make it. So how does that happen? Well, what happens is, as you're taking your 4%, these things are going to happen, and it's called life. Life happens. Some of you may have seen this. Okay, so you're going along, and then all of a sudden, the grandkids, you've downsized your home, and you've purchased a house at the lake because you want your grandchildren coming around. Well, as your grandchildren get older, guess what they like on the lake? A boat. So one year you decide, well, I'm going to go buy a boat. Well, that's beyond your 4% withdrawal or distribution that you agreed to take. So, okay, how are we going to make up for that boat? Well, now you're going back to your advisor, hoping they can invest your money in a way to get that money back. Because if it don't, that's a big hole in your account, right? Well, that's the boat. What about that $15,000 Disney trip that you want to take the entire family on, and you're going to pay for everybody to get there and their room and board? That could cut into it. And then, of course, I'd already mentioned the long-term care. If you don't have a policy to take care of those costs when you need long-term care, that's going to blow a big hole in it. So longevity, how in the world do we get this to go? Well, you want your income set up in something, or at least part of it. You want your portfolio into contracts that guarantee income for the rest of your life. It's a way for you to set up your own pension plan. Now, Social Security is a pension plan. As long as you're alive, when you're drawing Social Security, it will pay out until you pass away. It's guaranteed income. May not be a lot by the time you take it, but it's still guaranteed income. There are contracts out there that can do the same thing. So that's when you have your own personal savings that you want to use along with your Social Security for your retirement income. You would want to have that guaranteed. Now, does that mean you take all the portfolio and put it in those contracts? Well, not necessarily. You still want to have some money someplace where it can, be a little more aggressively on the growth side. But you would definitely want to make sure that some of that income is coming in and guaranteed for the rest of your life. So that's basically the 4 blind spots. You've got market fluctuations, healthcare, taxation, and then longevity risk. There are ways to hedge against all of those, and being real estate agents, if you have not started planning for your retirement, not a bad time to sit down and talk to somebody about how you might go about doing that. Be careful with just building wealth. Wealth is good. You need the wealth, but how you take that wealth back out is going to be more important than actually building the wealth. So in summary, that's just wrapping it up there is, how do we maintain, how long are we going to work? Being in the real estate industry, if you enjoy selling real estate, fortunately for you, it's not a physical demanding job. You may decide, as long as your mind is good and you can get around in a car, you can sell real estate for the rest of your life. So it may extend out how long you're working. So that's only going to help you save more money for when you can't work, because at some point it will come to where you can't work. But being fortunate to be in the real estate business can help. So that's how you want to maintain the same lifestyle in retirement that you had while you were working. And keep in mind, these 4 blind spots are going to hit you in retirement that you didn't have while you were in your working years. So it's important that you plan against those. I'm going to stop now and just ask, has anybody got any questions regarding the material that we've covered or the subject matter or anything at all? While we're waiting on questions, I'll go ahead and put my contact information here. As I said, if you don't have an advisor, I would like to apply for the job. But if you do have an advisor, the things we went over today, yeah, I certainly wouldn't ask you to switch. You don't know me from Tom's House Cat, so that's not what I'm asking for. But the subject matter we went over may be something you want to sit down with your advisor to discuss, to make sure that that person has got your best interest in mind, and there is a plan beyond just growing your wealth to a point where it would pay for all that, because that's not guaranteed. So you want to make sure that those subject matters have been discussed and at least addressed.
Well, I don't see any questions in the chat. But if anybody has any questions, you can unmute or you can send it through the chat, and I'll pass them along to Kyle.
Well, if there's not anything, then, Matt, I'll turn it back over to you. I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or anything you want to discuss. I'll be more than happy to take that call.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody's time. And like I said before, I hope everybody has good holidays and enjoy the rest of your year. And we look forward to starting up again in January. So keep an eye out for the next speaker announcement going out in the next few weeks. Anyways, thanks, Kyle, and everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.